In a hilarious blunder, some climate protesters glued their hands to the floor of a Volkswagen exhibit, but they forgot to plan for what happens when nature calls. We'll get into these dum-dums and what they did and why. Join us. Hello, and welcome to the channel. My name is Rich, and in this episode of RPW Media, we're going to be discussing how climate protesters, about 25 of them, descended upon a Volkswagen exhibit in Germany to protest climate change. They said that they targeted Volkswagen because it's the largest car company that manufactures vehicles in Europe and the second largest in the world. And in the little worldview that they created for themselves, they believe that Volkswagen is committing the worst atrocities on mankind with respect to climate change. Now, I bet they have a lot of computer models that explain this away to them instead of real evidence in the real world like other scientists do. But what's funny is when you see that they're shocked and dismayed that the people of Volkswagen didn't lift a finger to help them to do their protest against their own company. Now, before we get into this, can you do me a favor if you haven't already and click the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and give us a like? So, look at these guys. So, a group of wacko climate change protesters, they claim that they're scientists, they glued their hands to the floor of a Volkswagen exhibit in Wolfsburg, Germany. And that was after their colleagues poured red paint down the front steps in the front of the building to make it look like blood, and then they posed in front of the giant windows with these big sheets of paper that they put up that probably has their message on it. So I don't understand how these climate activists, why they always use the symbol of blood. I can understand that for like the animal rights wackos, but the climate people, why do they use blood? I mean, even if climate change exists in the way that they say it does and that we're all responsible for it, how is blood involved? I mean, you'd think that they'd have something like a lung or something. But I'll bet most people wouldn't understand. They wouldn't figure out that it's a lung on the front steps of a Volkswagen. I mean, that's just an observation. So on Wednesday, the group called Scientific Rebellion started their demonstration, but they weren't prepared. To say the least, they weren't prepared. The fact of the matter is that it was a big oops. Now, in the beginning, okay, they looked like they were an army of ants that were well organized. Watch this. Here they go. They got their bags. They're getting their stuff out. Putting glue on the windows. Next guy comes. Look at this. Hold the banner. Putting the poster boards up or whatever they are, the sheets of paper. Another guy rips it down. That was funny. We're going to see the guy pouring the blood in a second. The fake blood. Here he goes. Here he is. Look at this. He's pouring the blood. Look at all these people that are involved in this. Es ist nicht sehr gut für man. This is hilarious. Guy's like, oh, I got the wrong angle. You got it covered over there. Anyway, so what's going on now is once they're in there, at one point, the protesters inside that glued themselves to the floor, they started whining on social media that Volkswagen told them that they supported their right to protest, but they refused to provide them, get this, with bowls to urinate and defecate in while they were glued to the floor. I don't know about you, but I think that's hilarious. They turned off the heating for the building, and then the lights went out when it started getting dark out. The same guy posted a second time, but let's hear what his first one says.
I'm Gianluca Grimalda. I'm a researcher in social psychology at a research institute in Germany, and I'm here in the Porsche pavilion in the Autostadt of Wolfsburg to denounce the responsibility of Volkswagen in the climate emergency that we are facing. Volkswagen is the largest car manufacturer in Europe and the second largest in the world. And the transport sector, the car sector, has a huge responsibility in the climate emergency. There are 12% of CO2 emissions that come from the car sector. So we are here with 8 other members of a scientist rebellion and with the 6 people.
There's actually like 25 people there. I mean, you saw a little ant army running around out front, right?
Who are helping us to demand the acceptance of the demands of our campaign. The introduction of a speed limit on motorways in Germany and the reintroduction of the €9 tickets that allow the people to travel freely, well, for €9 on.
So he later on, he puts out a second tweet where he says, just a clarification, people in support can get out of the building, but they can't get back in. We can't order food. We must use the ones provided by Volkswagen. The lights are off. Random unannounced security checks with bright torches, which are over there, that's flashlights. The police just came in. So these clowns are upset that the company that they invaded and glued themselves to the floors are doing random security checks with flashlights in the dark. It's amazing that these eggheads thought that Volkswagen was supposed to pamper them with food and toilets while they're protesting against the company. Saying that you support their right to protest doesn't mean that you're going to support them in their protest. I mean, somehow they lost that concept of what a protest is. I mean, what a bunch of losers. They take over the floor of a Volkswagen exhibit and then start to whine when the company that they're screwing with doesn't make things perfectly comfortable for them during their protest. I think somebody screwed up the drawing board during their protest planning committee. I mean, what do you think? I mean, and what is their demands? He just said it. He said they insisted that the German government reduce the speed limit to 100 kilometers per hour, 62 miles per hour. That was one of their demands. But the protesters said that they were told that while they could leave at any time, they couldn't come back in. And they're complaining about this. The protesters today are such milquetoast. I mean, think about it. Back in the 60s, they would have just gone in their pants. They wouldn't have asked for bowls. Remember the hippies of the 1960s? The way they protested? They didn't give a damn. They would have shit themselves. And then in the 90s, they got a little more sophisticated. They would have worn adult diapers. I mean, to handle that problem anyway. So the lesson here for left-wing activists is it's all in the planning, folks. The execution of your goofy leftward land of silliness actions are all dependent on the planning phase. These guys were so thoroughly unprepared, especially after watching how organized that little ant army in the front, out front of the building was. I mean, those guys were actually prepared. But it seems like these were two different groups that split out amongst themselves. And I think the guys that glued their hands to the floor would have done themselves a real solid if they just sent a liaison over to the other planning committee, because they had better ideas, obviously. It seems like they're a generation of protesters who wanted to be pampered by the very people they're protesting against. I mean, can you possibly imagine if these guys were up against BLM or Antifa in the U.S.? I think they would get their asses kicked just on principle. Asking for bowls to defecate in, asking the people that you're actually holding hostage when you think about it for food, or asking if you can order food and have your support people come and bring it to. What the hell is that? I mean, I think in Germany they've lost the idea of what it means to protest, but this was just hilarious on the face of it, that they go in there, they take over, that they run around, pour fake blood all over the place to get their message out, glue their hands to the floor, but they forgot about what happens when nature calls. Unbelievable. Well, that's it. I thought you'd want to get a little laugh on a Friday afternoon. So thanks a lot. That's it. We'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.